For those of you who don't know me, my name is Stephen Millard. I'm the Deputy Director here for Macroeconomic Modelling and Forecasting. It's my absolute pleasure to invite you to this year's Prais Lecture. The Prais Lecture was established in 2019 and typically examines issues relating to productivity, economic growth, and human well-being. It was formed to commemorate Professor Sig Prais, a colleague, friend, and champion of the National Institute for over 60 years, and we were very privileged that his son David is with us today. The core focus of Sig's research was on productivity and industrial structure, where he concluded the poor quality in education were at the root of the UK's productivity problem. I don't know how many years on we are now, but that could still be a statement made about today. At risk of murdering our distinguished speaker's language, plus ça change, plus la même chose. Past speakers in this event include Lord Sainsbury and Bart van Ark from the Productivity Institute. So let's move to this year's lecture. So we're very, very privileged to have Philippe Aghion with us today. He's a professor at the Collège de France in INSEAD and at the London School of Economics. Widely recognized for his research on economic growth and innovation, in particular for developing the Schumpeterian paradigm with Peter Howard. I should say it's a phrase that people quite often use, but rarely is it literally true. But in this case, Professor Aghion literally wrote the book on economic growth. So we are very privileged to have him with us. He has held academic positions at a range of world-leading institutions, including Harvard, the University College London, and MIT. He was elected a Fellow of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences and a corresponding Fellow of the British Academy. He's received numerous honors, including the BBVA Foundation Frontiers of Knowledge Award in Economics. In today's talk, drawing on joint work with Simon, I'll probably get his name wrong, Bunel, who and the two of them have recently prepared a report on AI for President Macron. The lecture is going to trace the development of artificial intelligence, highlighting how advances in data availability and computing power have fueled AI's economic potential. Focusing on AI's productivity gains, particularly in sectors like customer service, it illustrates the transformative effects on business efficiency and growth, projecting significant contributions to GDP over the next decade. The discussion is also going to touch on the labour market impacts, stressing the need for policy reforms in competition, education, and employment to ensure that AI fosters sustainable growth without triggering mass unemployment. And on that note, I'm going to hand over to Professor Aghion. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much for inviting me. And that was intimidating crowd. So first, I mean, as you very generous introduction, and so it's true. So what I tried to contribute was with Peter Howitt, we here, and in 1987 we tried to write a new growth model encompassing the notion of creative disruption, which is the term whereby Joseph Schumpeter would refer to innovations displacing old technologies, new innovations making old technologies obsolete. But when I studied, at the time I was a student, and the most widely taught model in economic growth was the Solow model, the neoclassical growth model, which is a very elegant model, which revolves around two equations. One equation tells you that you produce output with capital labor, and you have kind of a coefficient for productivity. And the second equation will tell you how capital accumulates over time as a result of savings, which leads to investments to accumulate capital, and depreciation, which decumulates capital, and under reasonable assumptions of decreasing returns to capital accumulation. This model predicts no long-run growth of per capita GDP unless there is something called technical progress that Solow would not tell you where technical progress comes from. And at the time, you'd say, well, you know, it could come from the thing that Mr. Schumpeter is interested in, which is innovation. But at the time I studied, you know, when there was no, Schumpeter was mentioned as a curiosity. I mean, in an IO class or in a history of economic thought, you would talk about Schumpeter, but there was no model, there was no empirics, there was no nothing. So you had to write a model from scratch. And that's what we did with Howitt. In 1987 was my first year at MIT as an assistant professor, and Peter Howitt was visiting for 1 year from Western Ontario, and we're neighbors. And I went into his office and why don't we try to write down the model which encompasses Schumpeter. And that's what we did. And we wrote that model during the year that Peter was at MIT, which was 87, 88, okay? So now the model that we wrote revolves around three main ideas. The first idea is that long-run growth is driven by a cumulative process of innovation, whereby new innovations make old innovations obsolete. Okay, but you build upon previous innovation. So the important thing is that you have a cumulative process of innovation. Each innovator builds upon previous innovation. The second idea is that innovations do not come from heaven. They result from entrepreneurial activities that are motivated by the prospect of innovation runs. If you innovate, you have a new product or a cheaper way to do things, and therefore you can drive out potential competitors for a while. You get some monopoly runs for a while, and until you are superseded by subsequent innovators. But at least for a while, you get some runs, and it's the prospect of these runs that induces you to invest in innovation. You invest in innovation because you expect to get a run from it, at least for a while, until you are yourself become obsolete. And the third idea is creative destruction. New innovations displace old technologies. But you see, what makes this paradigm interesting is that at the heart of the growth process, there is a contradiction. On the one hand, you need runs, you need innovation runs to motivate innovation activities, and innovation is what fuels growth. But on the other hand, yesterday's innovators are tempted to use their runs to prevent subsequent innovations because they don't want themselves to be subject to creative destruction. And that's what makes growth an interesting process. It's a conflict between the old and the new. And regulating capitalism is largely about how to manage this contradiction. Whether you talk about secular stagnation, middle income trap, whatever, you always come across this contradiction. And that's what you don't have in previous growth models, any of them, neither Romer or Solo. I mean, this is a model which is all about heterogeneity. It's all about entrants versus incumbents, leaders versus followers, small firms versus large firms, firm dynamics, how you grow a firm. I am a firm with two activities, okay? How do I grow? I grow because I do creative destruction on you. I do better than on your line, and then I take over your line and I become a three-line firm. How do I shrink? Because I am a three-line firm. You do creative destruction on one of my lines, and I become a two-line firm. How do I enter? I am nobody, but I do creative destruction on your line, and I become a one-line firm. How do I exit? I am a one-line firm. Someone does creative destruction on me, and I exit. So it's very easy with the Schumpeterian paradigm. You can talk about entrant incumbents, leaders, followers, and you can talk about small and large firm, and you can talk about firm growth and firm shrinking and entry, exit. It's all about heterogeneity and firm dynamics. And that's what's interesting is that at the heart of the growth process, there is, you know, firm dynamics, there is turnover, and that's the Schumpeterian world, you see. And the econometrics of this growth theory is a microeconometrics. You don't do cross-country analysis, you do firm-level analysis, okay? And that's the growth, that's the econometrics of Schumpeterian growth economics, okay? And now it has spread out over, and there are lots of people now following, Pete Lino, Ufuk Aksigi, John Van Reenen, and I know many people that you know now work, Michael Peters, Fabrizio Zilibotti, Daron Acemoglu got the prize. He wrote a book called Why Nations Fail, which is totally Schumpeterian. Oh, is it? I'm losing, which is all about Schumpeterian. So it's been a kind of influential approach. Voilà. Just to advertise a bit the Schumpeterian growth economics. Okay. Now there are two distinctive predictions of the theory. One is that growth is positively correlated with firm turnover. Of course, where you have more turnover, more entry, but you could measure creative destruction by the flow of new entrants or by job creation, job destruction. John Alty Wonger and co-authors have documented a lot about, you know, cross US state or cross US municipalities, variation in job creation, job destruction. Wherever you have more churning, more job creation, job destruction, more entry, you tend to have more growth. Voilà. That's one prediction of the model. Okay. Another prediction is about competition, product market competition. I always tell the same story. So you are a classroom. You are all equally good. Let's suppose that some of you are on the top of the class and some of you are on the bottom of the class. And suppose I open the door and I let in a very good element. What will happen? The top of the class will work harder to remain the top of the class. They will innovate to escape competition with a new entrant. But the bottom of the class, which is already discouraged, they will be even more discouraged. It's the same with firms. The blue line represents firms that are close to the technological frontier in their sector. They react to more product market competition by innovating more. Okay. Whereas the orange firms are firms that are far below the frontier in their sector. They tend to react negatively to competition. Overall, we can show it's an inverted U. That's the work I've done with Richard Blondel, Rachel Griffiths, and other co-authors. Okay, IFS very much. Huh? So it's very done here in this country. Okay. Now it's interesting also is that when you have a more developed country, the more developed the country is, the higher the average productivity of a country, the more blue firms you have compared to orange firms. So you can already conclude that the more advanced the country is, the more growth enhancing it is to have competition. Okay, so that's something also to keep in mind. Maybe if you are very much backward, competition is not so important, but as you become more frontier, competition becomes increasingly growth enhancing. Okay, so those are the kind of ideas. So you see, I told you, leaders, followers, entrants, incumbents, small firms, large firms. Well, that's the Schumpeter and world for you. Okay, that's where I'm coming from. That's just a way to introduce myself. Okay, but here I'm to talk about this report, which there is an English version, and I can make the English version available. I mean, I can send to Margherita and send the English version. It was asked by Macron, President Macron, and handed over the report in March. Okay, and there's been a similar report, I'm sure, in the UK. You had a commission in the US. Eric Bridgerson was in charge of a commission, and there's been various. Everybody has had its own commission, and that's the one I was heading, co-heading with Anne Bouvreau, who is organizing the AI summit in Paris in February. The next AI summit is in Paris, and my co-president is organizing. Okay, so now of course, if those of you who know about AI, will find my introduction boring because you know everything and much more than I do. The history of AI is over 70 years old. As early as 1950, the British mathematician and cryptologist Alan Turing was interested in the ability of a machine to imitate conversation. So it's all like big ideas. It all started in the UK. It was a few years later, in 1956, that the term artificial intelligence first appeared. AI first developed in the form of deductive rules of the type if something, then something. This is the so-called symbolic approach based on reasoning and instructions. Although this symbolic approach has not been abandoned, a statistical approach to AI has been gaining ground since the 1990s, and machine learning is exactly about this statistical approach. Unlike the symbolic approach, the human does not determine a set of if something, then something. Instead, they ensure that the computer learns to identify statistical relationships between data. So there is no explicit human instruction. The machine is trained to recognize links for a set of training data. The machine then applies these links to new data to perform a task. The success of the statistical approach relies on two essential ingredients, data and computing power. The availability of these two ingredients has increased sharply over the past 30 years, under particularly the digitization of our society. We produce much more data, and of course, improvement in semiconductor material, which has increased computing power. Okay, so of course, the AI revolution, as you know, affects all domains of activities. It's a truly what we call a general purpose technology. I know the word GPT, you have the chat GPT, but you have also GPT for general purpose technology. It's a revolution like steam engine has been, like electricity, like internet. And that's another revolution. It affects all sectors of the economy. The economy, public services, the organization of work, media, culture. And in particular, the emergence of generative AI represents an unprecedented acceleration by simplifying the use of certain tools to the extreme and by generating text, images, sounds at an extraordinarily high speed and with a stunning degree of realism. Okay, so just to give you an idea, it took 2.5 years for Netflix to reach 1 million users. It took 2.5 months for Instagram to reach 1 million users. It took 5 days for ChatGPT to reach 1 million users. It gives you the idea of the speed. Now there are two views there. So I like to Darren who got I usually make the presentation with Darren, but of course luckily got the prize this year. So he's my friend. We write together. We co-author paper, but on something we are not totally in agreement. But not, in fact, at the end of the day, we are pretty much in agreement. But I like to contrast my view with his view. But in fact, they may be less different than it appears. He may appear like very pessimistic, like saying, you know, AI has very little growth impact and very negative employment impact. I am more cautiously optimistic. I try to argue here that AI has growth potential and also AI has employment potential, provided that you have the right policies and institutions. So my view is not a kind of Panglossian optimism. No, it's that there is potential with AI, both growth and employment potential. But to harness this potential, you need to adapt institutions and policies. And of course, the problem always is that, and particularly it's true with AI, technology is ahead of institutions. It goes very fast, AI, and we are very slow in adapting our policies and institutions, okay? So that will be more my take, okay? So I am moderately optimistic. I'm not fantastically optimistic, but I'm pessimistic not about the technology. I'm more pessimistic about us, our ability to adapt to the technological revolution. See, that's where we are not exactly, we end up saying the same thing, which is you need good institutions and policies, but we come from different angles. Voilà. We may end up converging in something very similar, but I like to present it this way. So let me talk first about AI and growth. So the way I want to organize my talk about AI and growth, then I talk about AI and employment, and then I talk about Draghi. Voilà. Voilà. Because in fact, I found out that it was in Lancaster Palace that Draghi pronounced the whatever it takes. I didn't know that. I found out. So, yeah, but you know who Draghi is, of course. AI and growth. So we wrote a paper with Ben Jones and Chad Jones. That was the only non-Jones of the trio. So minority there. And we try to model the fact that AI automates both the production of goods and services. I mean, it automates tasks that are used in the production of goods and services, and it also automates tasks in the production of ideas. And that's what makes maybe AI different from previous revolutions, is that to a larger extent, at least, it also automates the production of ideas. You see, so it makes ideas easier to find. I don't believe personally that ideas are harder to find. Okay, so that's something also where I love I love John Van Reenen, I love Nick Bloom. They wrote a beautiful paper saying ideas harder to find. I don't believe in this. Voilà. I'll tell you why I don't believe in ideas harder to find later on. Even without AI, but even more with AI, ideas are not harder to find. Okay, so why do we believe that AI makes ideas easier to find? Because it helps find solutions to complex problems. It facilitates imitation and learning. It can become self-improving to a larger extent that previous generic technologies could do. Okay, so there is a first paper which is I think forthcoming at Revised Resubmit in the QJE now by Eric Brynjolfsson and co-authors called Generative AI at Work. And what's very interesting is that this paper considers a Fortune 500 American company. So it's among the 500. It's one among the 500 most successful companies in the US. And this company advises American small and medium-sized enterprises on software. Okay, so you are the manager of an American small and medium-sized enterprise. You call this firm and you say, well, look, I don't know how to install, how to do it. I use software, what do I do? And then you are directed to employees, which are not only in the US, in fact, many of them are in the Philippines, okay? And you have a Philippine employee, and the Philippine employee takes your call and tries to provide you with an answer to the question you ask, okay? So the way to measure agent productivity is to look at the number of resolutions per hour. And so what they do is that, of course, not all employees had access to ChatGPT at the same time. So it was, progressive. So that you see, you had some didn't have access as early as others. And so you could compare the productivity of an employee, Philippe, who has access to ChatGPT, to the productivity of an identical employee in terms of prior productivity and other characteristics that are observable, but who didn't have yet access to ChatGPT. So you can do a difference in difference, or kind of event study. And what you find is that, what they find is that 1 month after the ChatGPT adoption, you have a 14% increase in productivity, and 2 months after, you are up to 25%. So they find in that case clearly an increase in productivity. And in fact, various people have spoke with, I met various, managers, and they all report similar things. They all said, it was ChatGPT was a marked increase in productivity when I introduced it. Okay, so that's a very micro study. Okay, so you'd like to know how about moving from micro to macro? So moving from micro to macro, you have 2 ways to do that. One way is to extrapolate from previous general purpose technology. Okay, you could say, well, I consider that AI is something of the same importance as electricity or the IT revolution. Okay, and we know that usually what happens, Paul David tells you about that. For a while, when you have a technological revolution, for a while not much happens, and then you have a period of acceleration where the technology diffuses to the overall economy, and then it stops. And for a 10-year period or whatever, you have an increased growth rate. You see what I mean? While you have the diffusion. So the thing with one way we need to say, well, look, I know nothing about AI, but suppose that AI is something of the same, importance as electricity, IT. What should we predict? Another way, which is maybe more satisfactory, which Darren adopted, was to use a task-based approach, and we will and go to both. Okay. So extrapolating from previous GPTs, in fact, you see, if you look at the electricity revolution, it in the US, it increased productivity growth at the US level by 1.3 percentage point for 10 years, essentially. Okay, so for 10 years, if the growth rate was at 1%, it would go up to 2.3%. Okay, if it's IT, it was a 10-year increase by 0.8 and then finished. Okay, so if you say, well, if I believe that IT is between the electricity and AI is between electricity and IT, I would say there's something of the order of 0.8, 1.3. You see, but that's the kind of order of magnitude for 10 years. Okay, that's one way. And so you would think, well, that would be the evolution of the GDP without AI, and with AI for a 10-year period, you grow faster, and then you are back to the growth rate you had before, but you have a permanent increase, of course, in GDP. Okay, so that's the kind of what you would get from extrapolating. But you would say, well, now there is another method, which is to rely on the task-based model. For example, Darren and Restrepo had a task-based model, which was very much based on Joseph Zira, who had done previous work on that. And they estimate the effect of AI on TFT, use this task-based model. So the idea is to say, as I said, AI automates tasks in the production of goods and services. So it also automates tasks in the production of ideas. But here we just concentrate on the fact that AI automates tasks in the production of goods and services. So then you could say, well, the TFT gain, it will all depend. It will say, well, first you have a set of tasks that are exposed to AI. If no task was exposed to AI, the AI would make zero difference. Then among the tasks that are exposed to AI, there are those for which it is truly profitable to implement AI. Okay? Then you want to know the labor cost saving enabled by AI. But of course, it depends on the labor share, because of course, if there is no labor or very little labor, there is not much sharing. So the idea there is to say, well, to have a sense of the TFT gain, I have to look at the product of these 4 terms. And Darren has put some figures there, and he concludes at an increase of 0.07% for 10 years, which is 10 times less than what I had before. Okay, it's very, very small. So what we've done with my friend from Banque de France, with Simon Bunel, we went back to this. Okay, let's take seriously what Daron did, but let's look more closely at the numbers. Okay, so I will look at each of those terms there. Okay, so for example, the GDP share of tax. Daron took the figure from this paper, but you know, IMF, for example, is much more optimistic on the share of tax that are exposed to AI. So it's anything between this and this. Daron took the lower bound. Okay, why not? Okay, bon. Then you look at the share among the exposed tasks. You look at the share among those tasks that where it's profitable to implement AI. So Daron said, well, at today's cost, 23% of visual tasks exposed to AI will be profitable to automate for American firms. But the thing is that there is technical progress. You see which implies that the share of tasks that are profitable will increase over time because you have in fact cost reduction in AI implementation. Okay, so the same paper by Thornberg proposes 3 scenarios of cost reduction, respectively of 10%, 20%, and 50% per year, leading to this. You see what I mean? To 30%, 50%, 80% of visual tasks exposed to AI that become profitable by 2042. So in fact, the interval to consider is not 23%, is this interval. Okay, and again, there is at the lower bound. Okay, so that so again, you have to, when you look at profitable, you have to take into account that there is technical progress, and technical progress implies that the cost of implementation goes down over time, and that increasingly more tasks will be profitably AI'd over the years. Okay, and there is another problem there, is that here the focus is on visual tasks, but you see you have other tasks, for example, capability of understanding writing or language. You have all these tasks. So here you have and you see on all these tasks there, you have faster, in fact, learning. You see what I mean? So he concentrated on visual tasks, but there are tasks where the cost reduction will be even stiffer, will be faster than on visual tasks. So even that number is a lower bound in a sense. You see what I mean? Because you focus on not on the activity where the cost reduction will be the most dramatic. Okay. Then you get to the labor cost saving enabled by AI. So what Daron does is to say, I put 27% as an average of this paper. And you remember when I spoke about Richardson, I said 14% after 1 month, 25. So what Daron did was to take the 14%, but after 2 months, you are 25%. Okay. So what he does is that he takes the average between this and the 14%. And in fact, you could do we believe that the interval to consider is 33, 40. Okay, and so it's more. At the very minimum, you should take the average with the 25%, and so you would be at 33, not 27. So overall, you see, it can be anything between 0.07 or 0.08 and 1.24. And we believe the median scenario, is that the share of tasks exposed to AI will be 60%. The share of tasks exposed for which will be profitable to use AI to 50% due to a 22 annual reduction in computing time cost, which is a serious number from this paper. And the productivity gains enabled by AI is estimated at 40, and we get a 0.68. So you remember when I did the extrapolation, it was between 0.8 and 1.2. Here I get 0.7. So it's the same order of magnitude. In fact, it's 10 times more than what Daron gets. And I have a similar order of magnitude than what I get using the extrapolation. So you see, at the very minimum, if I just look seriously at AI automating tasks in the production of goods and services, I get to at least something like 0.6, 0.7% per year, 0 percentage point, 0.7 percentage point for 10-year period. Okay, but so you get. But remember that AI also automate tasks in the production of ideas. I'm sorry, I'm losing you there. No? Okay. So in fact, here I said, well, let's take 0.68 for 10 years. So that will give you the red line, and then you go back. But remember that also AI automate tasks in the production of ideas. It means that even for 10 years, you should have a higher growth, and here even permanently, you should have a higher growth rate. This tends to be steeper than this line, because in fact you've improved forever the technology to find new ideas. Of course, the problem is that we don't know yet how to quantify. So now a big part now, a new research on AI is to try to do with goods and services, with ideas, what we did with goods and services. You see, we should try to put numbers by how much we believe. For example, you do research, how much time you save by using machine learning, for example, we know a lot of growth is recombinant growth, how much faster you are when you have ChatGPT to do recombinant growth, okay? And that's yet to be done. Well, you see what I mean? So the 0.7 for 10 years, it's a lower bound, because on top of that, you have to quantify how much extra growth you get by the fact that you automate the production of ideas, not only the production of goods and services. And that we don't know yet how to quantify, okay? So that's where we are. That's the current thing. So to summarize, to sum up, well, Daron will tell you that there is essentially almost no growth potential of AI. I believe there is a big growth potential of AI. Now, the problem is my source of pessimism is the institution, is that the lack of competition in particular can be a problem, okay? So it's very much based on a paper that I wrote with Philippe, Timo Boppard, Antonin Bergeau, Yui Li, which is in the Review of Economic Studies last year, which is called a theory of falling growth and rising rents. And then what we show, well, first we start from this, observation. You see that, you remember Solow saying that computers were everywhere, but in the statistics, Solow was here. Right after Solow spoke, you had the growth turned up. So it brings up Solow. Whenever he says something, and that's voilà. Okay. So this is the average annual TFT growth rate for this period. And you see between 1996 and 2005 in the US, the average TFT growth rate goes up a lot. Okay. But then it falls down a lot. So that's interesting. Why does it fall down? And that's what the part of the secular stagnation dilemma. Why does it fall down? It falls down particularly in IT producing sectors, the black curve. So you have the upsurge followed by a decline, and then also in IT using sectors, which is the gray curve. Okay, so it has to do with IT. And in fact, what happened is that you had during the IT revolution, you had a phenomenon that, in particular, John von Reenen with Autor, Katz, Dorn, et al. Have very well documented, which is the rise of superstar firms. Okay, you had those firms that took advantage of the IT revolution best. Amazon, Walmart, Google, Microsoft, they carried the growth process. But what happened is that those firms expanded through merger and acquisition, and they ended up discouraging the entry of new firms. And you can see the entry of new firms declining in the US. You see since the 2000s, and that's very much the Schumpeterian conundrum that I told you about the other people. You got the innovators; those are the big innovators, and they end up discouraging new innovators. Okay, and to show the fact that they became tentacular is shown very much by this picture by Dolocker, Eckert, and Unger, but Prais and Backay have a similar picture. Here it shows that the average markup in the US went up over the past period, but not so much because within firms it went up. Within firms you don't see an upward trend. That's the blue curve. It's a composition effect in the black curve. It's because the high markup firms that were the superstar firms became increasingly more pervasive, increasingly more prominent. You see what I mean? So you really have this phenomenon that those firms, in fact, the average markup went up because those high markup firms, through merger and acquisition, they gain ground. Okay, and if you look at the labor share, it's exactly the mirror of that. The average labor share in the US goes down, not so much because within firms the labor share goes down, it's because the low labor share firms, which were these superstar firms, they have high profit share, low labor share, they become more prominent through merger and acquisition. Now, why am I mentioning that? Because the problem there is that you had a competition policy in the US that was not suited to the IT revolution. You see, nothing was done to prevent those firms from expanding. Now there can be good mergers and bad mergers. There can be a merger that encourages startup to do well, because the startup would say, if I do well, then I will be bought out by Microsoft or Facebook or whatever. But there can be also mergers that are there to kill the competition. You see what I mean? And nothing was done there very much, you see? So, and why am I worried about that? And so in particular, Richard Gilbert, with a colleague, in Berkeley, has written a book at MIT Press, trying to point to the fact that competition policy in the US, but it's also true in Europe, is very much static. It's very much a competition policy, which is market definition, market share. They are obsessed by market share, but they don't look at whether a merger and acquisition would discourage future and future innovation. So he advocates, Richard Gilbert advocates a more dynamic competition policy. You see what I mean? Where you would look at future and future innovation, not just at market share. And in fact, the same is true in Europe. It's very much market share oriented. Not enough do I discourage future innovation, future entry. And that's why in Europe, you have no entry. In Europe, there is very little creative disruption. Okay. So that I think is a very interesting. Now, if I move to AI, the problem is that if you look at the value chain of AI, particularly the upstream segments of the value chain are dominated by few firms. For example, the cloud is dominated by 3 superstar firms, Amazon, Google, Microsoft. You have only one big actor, GPU, on the market for graphing processes. And that's why it's very important to have competition policy. I told you the importance of competition. How do you stimulate, how do you boost competition? Well, you can do Gilbert. You have a more dynamic way of doing merger acquisition, regulating merger and acquisition. You take into account future and future. You can also, the Digital Market Act should be extended to encompass the cloud and all the segments of the AI value chain, which is not yet the case. Open source is very important. So you have various, data sharing. You have various, levels. You see, you have various engines to boost competition, and those are very important. And in this report to Macron, we push all of them: more dynamic competition, open source, DMA extended to the whole value chain. You have to play on all these instruments to boost competition and to avoid what happened with IT. So that I think is a big problem. That's a big. So you see there, my take is to say AI has a high growth potential, but the thing is that the competition policy has not yet adapted to the AI revolution. Okay. So that's where my pessimism is. Okay. Technology is doing well. Institutions are slow to adapt. Okay. That's my view. Now I move to AI and employment. That again, I have it's an area of diagram. We have done previous work on automation, and that's one thing again where with Darren we did not agree. So we work a lot together on green innovation. So and we do very good work. But on automation, we did not quite agree because he wrote papers where he tried to claim that that automation and robotization was bad for employment. In fact, there is not all the firm level studies point to a positive effect of automation on employment, including one that he did with for papers and proceedings of AER with Le Large and Restrepo, AER papers and proceedings a few years ago. So what we did with Xavier Jaravel is my colleague at the LSE, and Simon Bunel and Céline Antonin, what we did is to use comprehensive firm level data in France, and we compared the employment in a firm that automates, here adoption of industrial equipment, but it can be the automation measure of a paper-based Hemoglu and Restrepo, or it can be just robotization, and a firm that automates, they create employment. I'm losing you, guys. I'm losing you. Are you there with me? So a firm that automates creates employment. I compare a firm, employment in a firm that automates, to a similar firm that does not automate. And there is creation. Now you tell me how come you replace manpower by robots? How come robotization increases employment? Because you have a productivity effect. When you robotize, you become more productive, therefore more competitive. So the quality price ratio goes up, and therefore the world market for your product goes up, the demand for your product goes up, and therefore you employ more. And this productivity effect more than counteracts the substitution of robots, of manpower by robots. You see what I mean? That's the kind of thing we find. And in fact, we did a first study firm level in France. There's been other studies in other countries that find exactly the same thing. Okay. And we did IV, we did even study, then we have an IV strategy using shift share. Jaravel is the king of shift share regression with his work with Borusiak. And we find, stubbornly a positive effect. Okay. And why? Because when you automate, your sales go up and your export sales go up. And therefore that creates employment. So taxing robots is not a good idea because you shoot yourself in the feet. You prevent innovation. It's like taxing innovation. Okay. So that is very superior because we do business stealing partly. You steal business to firms that do not automate. Employment in firms that do not automate, when you have firms that automate in the same sector, goes down. Okay, that's why you are vegetarian again. Okay, so that's about automation. Let me go back to AI. Are things different for AI? Although what we did is for the purpose of this report, we had a kind of survey using the French National Statistical Office, INSEE, and we have a sample of 9,000 firms with each of them more than 50 employees. And we have even studies comparing firms that adopt some AI between 2018 and 2020 and similar firms that do not AI at all between 2020. So we have a treatment group, we have a control group, okay? And what do we find? Same thing. AI boosts employment, okay? Now, it's true for male jobs, female jobs, okay? So it's same. Now, the thing is, it's not uniform across all jobs. And that's where, for example, executive secretary, administrative service, legal service, there is no positive. It may even be negative. So it globally increases employment, but not uniformly across all jobs. So now this echoes a study produced by the International Labour Office, by those authors. And what they do is that, again, they decompose jobs into tasks. And they say, well, I want to know the extent to which the task will be made redundant by AI or not. So what they do is they say, well, for each task on a job, I will put a low score if there is a small replacement risk on that task. I put a kind of middle score if there is a medium replacement risk, and I put a high score if there is a high replacement risk. And then you see, it's very interesting. Those are all managerial jobs: advertising and public relations manager, senior government official, health services manager, blah, 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 blah. Each line is a managerial job. What you see for these jobs is that most of the tasks are in the low replacement risk. Some of them have high replacement risk, but some tasks, the ideal, where AI is the best for managers, was those jobs, because what I want is that the boring tasks be replaced, and I can concentrate on the more creative tasks. So those are the happiest managers with AI, actually, because some of their tasks are replaced, but they can concentrate on the exciting tasks. Okay? Now, if you look at clerical support workers, typists, scribes, inquiry clerks, there you see, particularly here, most of the tasks here are replaced. You see, so those jobs here are at risk because most of the tasks that compose those jobs are at risk. So it goes very much in line with what we found. I mean, the jobs for which we didn't find a positive effect are very much the jobs for which this labor ILO study finds that most of the tasks are there. Okay. So then what you can do is that what we did with France, with my friend Antonin Bergeau, we did a beautiful lecture in Sintra. I don't know if any of you are in Sintra. He did a beautiful lecture on productivity. What here Antonin does is that the more to the upward on the vertical, the higher you are, the higher the degree of exposition to AI. And when you move rightward, it means that you have more tasks that are not exposed. You see what I mean? So the work is not wet. Those are highly exposed, and most of the tasks are likely to be replaced. So, for example, accountant, remote sales. I don't know if we say télévendeur. How do we say télésales? Télésales, you say télésales? Some secretarial jobs. Those jobs are very much popular. They are highly exposed, and most of the tasks are, with high risk of being replaced. Okay, but then the rest are not so much. So what you can do is that you can start from here. You say accountant, télésales, and you get to there. Those jobs are really at risk, but you can look at the share of total employment they represent. They represent essentially 10% of the jobs. So 10% of the jobs are really at risk. Once you get there, those jobs are okay. They have to restructure, they have to be rethought, but the jobs are maintained. You see what I mean? So it's not, there was the fear that, when people spoke about existential risk of AI, that we would all become redundant. It's not quite as bad. You see what I mean? You have a share of jobs which will be replaced, but it's a kind of 10% at most. Most jobs will be preserved, at least in the medium term. But what's important, so AI, we don't predict mass unemployment. By the way, we know each time you had a technological revolution, there was the fear of mass unemployment. You have the Luddite movement when you had the steam engine revolution. Then when you had the electricity revolution, Keynes would predict mass unemployment, which never occurred. And then when you have the robots, my friends predict mass unemployment, which never occurred. And now when you have AI, again, some people predict, the existential risk. They say, we don't believe that there is such risk, okay? But again, to harness the employment potential of AI, we need to have appropriate institutions. What we need is a good education system. I know that in the UK, you've made efforts to improve the education system. In France, we need to do efforts. We used to have a good education system in France. It has gone down a lot in the past years, okay? We would like to be like what Finland achieved after the 1970s. I know also Finland is recently going down a bit, but it's still fine. Korea has a fantastic education system. But you have Portugal, for example, with Nuno Crato has done a fantastic reform of education system, and the PISA tests have gone up. France, we need to do a reform like Nuno Crato, like what the Finns did in 1970. Okay, and so we need an equitable education system, and then on top of that, you have good labor market policy. My preferred labor market policy. So in the US, you have the death of despair phenomenon. In the US, it's the uncased Angus Deaton phenomenon. So this shows the mortality of unskilled middle-aged, non-white Hispanics in the US. And you can see that the death rate has gone up a lot. And why is that? Because they get stressed. When you lose your job in the US, you lose partly health insurance, you lose status, and people are really stressed to lose their job. Okay, they are not protected. There is no proper safety net, and that's why they take opioids, they take sleeping pills, they eat pizza too much. I love pizza, but they eat pizza non-stop. Okay, so no, it's dramatic, and then the death rate goes up, becomes Monty Python. Okay, so that's the thing, dramatic. So that's Germany and France. UK is blah 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 blah. UK it should be going down. The UK is not as bad as the US, but it's somewhere between the US and continental Europe. Okay, that's what you have there. Okay, in Denmark, my colleague Alexandra Roulet from INSEAD, she has done a very interesting study on Denmark. In Denmark, when you lose your job, up to some level of wage of salary, you get 90% of your salary for 2 years. And then the state retrains you and helps you find a new job. If you refuse more than 2 jobs in your qualification, then the unemployment subsidy goes down. It's a fantastic system. So what Alexandra did is to compare the health of a Danish employee in a firm that closes down to an identical employee in terms of age, education, and experience in a firm that does not close down. And it's a diff in diff. Okay, I compare the health before, after the close down, to someone with the firm that does not close down. Okay, different in different. You see no effect to the health of the worker that loses her job on the purchase of antidepressants, anti-anxiety, and sleeping pills. No effect on the probability to have circulatory problems, and in fact, I don't show it, no effect on mortality. So they found a good system. So they have a flex security system. It works also well because they have a good education system. If you don't have a good education system, it's very hard to have a good flex security system. So that I believe a good education system, and on top of it, a good flex security system, good retraining and generate unemployment insurance and help you find a new job. That's the way to harness the employment potential of AI. Okay, so I think AI has overall growth potential. Some jobs will be put at risk, some jobs have to restructure, but that's where you need a kind of Danish system. You see what I mean? That's very much my take on that. Okay, so at the end of this stage, you see, AI has growth potential, but there to harness it, you need competition policy. In particular, factor in entry and innovation in your competition policy. Don't just look at market share, market definition. You have AI has employment potential, but then you need to harness it, have a good flex security and education system. And that's my view, and that takes time to do. And the problem is that now AI goes very fast. Institutional change, the policy change is slow. And that's where my pessimism is. You see, it's not the same as other people's pessimism. Okay, so that's what I want to say. Now, I would like to just say a few words about how to deal with Europe's technological decline. Okay, so if you look, that's the GDP per capita of the Euro area since 1890 compared to the US. So of course it went down. It went down a lot. Already it goes down there because there is electricity revolution in the US, which does not fully diffuse in Europe. And then of course with the war, we go to, because there is lots of disruption here, in particular in the UK, you have lots and not in the US as much. Then you have a big catch up. There is a catch up phase. And then since the 90s, again, we go down vis-à-vis the US. You see our GDP per capita declines relative to US GDP per capita. Okay? And we see that, for example, since the 90s, our labor productivity growth is kind of half the rate of the labor productivity growth in the US. Okay? If you look at innovation, if you look at the high tech, particularly, you have a decline of the euro area. There is China rising, and that's where the US is. But if you look at the number of top technologies, we are way behind. Okay? And Europe is falling. And remember, I told you that, you know, as you become more developed, you need more competition. Okay? But that's one policy. But more generally, that's the only equation I will show that's based on work with Acemoglu and Diliboti. We generalize this thing that I said about competition. We said, in fact, to grow, you can either catch up with the frontier, the mu m, or you can innovate upon yourself. You go from A to gamma A, where gamma is greater than 1. That's frontier innovation. When you are way below A bar, you grow by imitation, adaptation. That's what we do after the war. That's what China has done. China, because they have okay education system and they had WTO, that allowed them to grow a lot through imitation. Okay, but then when you get efficiency goes to a bar, you should focus on frontier innovation. But the policies that are good for mu m are not the same policies that those that are good for mu n. If you are in the business of mu m, it's essentially, you know, good basic education, transfer of technology, factor reallocation. Those are management practices, like in Bloom, Van Reenen work. Those are fine if you are in the business of catching up. If you are in the business of frontier innovation, you need competition, you need labor market flexibility because you're in frontier innovation, but you need also the Draghi plan. You need to invest, and I will tell you more about the Draghi plan, okay? And that's why Europe is not doing as well as the US, okay? And so that's where we are behind. So what I said, why did we catch up after the war? Because we did capital deepening thanks to the Marshall Plan and to low price of energy. We could rebuild our capital stock. But also because we had okay education system, we could absorb, we have an absorptive capacity for US technology. So that's how we grew, by imitation and capital accumulation, okay? But now, what we need for competition, we need competition for frontier innovation. But on top of that, we need a well-funded and well-governed basic research system. We need an adequate financial ecosystem. And we need appropriate industrial policy in strategic domains, okay? And so well-funded, well-governed, but in the US, they have well-funded universities. In the UK, you do too. So in the UK, you're doing pretty well, okay? I would love France to be as good as the UK when it comes to universities, okay? Government research agencies, they have the NSF and the NIH, for example. But they also have private foundations, like the Howard Hughes Medical Investigator. Those are private donors. They select promising researchers and they give them on the long term. This is the problem with ERC and NSF. You get a grant for 5 years, but then you have no guarantee that you'll be renewed. In fact, generally, you won't be renewed. And so then you after 5 years, what's next? And they have in the US these private foundations, like the Howard Hughes Medical Investigators in biotech, to fund promising researchers in the long run. In Germany, they have the Max Planck Institute. I don't know if I'm sure you have things in the UK. Okay, so that's what they have in the US. In Europe, in general, we don't have as much. Okay, we don't have the equivalent. Then the financial ecosystem. It's true the UK is doing better than continental Europe. But in the US, they have very developed. When you have a startup, you need venture capital. It's not bank finance. But when you are a startup innovator, you have no collateral. You have very risky outcomes. It's a venture capitalist that you know. It's someone that will take control, and he or she will have a share of the upside if you do a profit. That's the venture capital. A bank will not do this. You see what I mean? It's too bureaucratic, banks. And they have very developed venture capital. You do too here, but they have that very much in the US. They have institutional investors to push innovation in large firms, in compute-stat firms. Those firms, you need to shield managers, to help managers take risks. Institutional investors, that's what they do. I did paper with Zingales and Van Reenen in the American Economic Review, where we show the role. It was not at all our prior. We saw the importance of institutional investors, pension funds, mutual funds, to boost innovation in larger firms, okay? And they have a tax subsidy incentive. In the UK, it's not that bad. I mean, you subsidize small firms, small new firms. In France, you subsidize big elephants, even when they don't innovate. We subsidize Sanofi to send Doliprane to the US. Voilà. That's what we do. We do big presents to large firms, to large elephants. So that's what. So in the UK, it's pretty good, but in continental Europe, we don't have that. Okay, and they have a unified, of course, capital market in the US. And then the third thing is, so for example, here, whereby Aghion shows that in the US, venture capitalists target the most innovative firms. It's the top quintile in terms of patenting that gets most financing from VC. So the VC are very good at selecting innovative firms in the US. Okay, but if you want to just look at the share, but also what Ufuk shows is that on top of selection, he compares people who receive the venture capital to similar firms in terms of productivity, innovation, did not receive. On top of the selection, the venture capital has a boosting effect on innovation. So the venture capital is not only that good at selecting, but they boost innovation when they select. Okay, we don't have anything of the kind. Venture capital in France is almost non-existent compared to what it is in the US. Okay, and institutional investors, you see, it's became very important in the US. We don't have anything of the kind in France or other countries, and that's the effect of on innovation of institutional investors. The share of institutions is the first row, and you see each time any measure of innovation we have, and we show it's causal. That's what we do in the paper with Andrinon and Zingales. We show a positive effect of institutional ownership on innovation in larger firms. Okay, so that's the thing. Now, the sectoral policies, we get to the ARPA model. Remember, I said competition is important. So now in the 1990s, Anne Kruger, who was the deputy director of IMF, we say if we believe in competition, we should go against any form of industrial policy. Because with industrial policy, you pick winners, you go against competition. And through the way, for example, France was doing industrial policy was called vertis. We would pick we would pick the winners. That's not good. Okay, so in that sense, it was good to say if you believe in competition policy, and we do believe in competition policy, you should not do this kind of thing. Don't pick winners. But in the US, they invented something which is pro-entry, pro-competition, and still is industrial policy. It's the ARPA model. In the 1950s, they created the DARPA, Defense Advanced Project Agency, because they were racing with the Soviet Union, and the Soviet Union had put Gagarin in space. You had to put a man in space, a woman in space within 2 years, not to look stupid. And so that's a mission. So there are areas like that where you have missions, you have the basic research already done, but you need to translate this research and make it operational. That's the next curve, because you need to coordinate agents and money to do this path, to do this transition from the basic to the commercialization stage. And so DARPA was a very successful model. They created the DARPA. The model of DARPA is that the money comes from the defense ministry. They choose team leaders from industry or academia for a period of 3 to 5 years. And the team leaders have perfect freedom to allocate to elicit competing projects. And they elicit competing firms to fulfill the mission. And that's what they did. And with DARPA, you got GPS, internet, all those guys are corollaries. They came out of DARPA, directly or indirectly, okay? And later on, they created ARPA Energy, ARPA Infrastructure. And then they created the BARDA, Biomedical, the Biomedical Advanced Research Development Authority. As we know, we are all here. I know you had the vaccine here, you called AstraZeneca, when it was the one, the non-RNA. But we are all here a lot because of RNA, okay? So, and that was BARDA. Even though you had some more labs like Pfizer, eventually it's BARDA that, turned the RNA technology into mass production of vaccines based on RNA within 1 year. And that's how we got out of COVID. And that's exactly, and they had many labs competing for that. You see what I mean? So it's a pro-competition way to do industrial policy. That's what they have in the US. We don't have anything similar in continental Europe. There is there is what we call the European Innovation Commission, the EIC, which pretends to be a DARPA. And there is a recent report from Bocconi, Toulouse School of Economics, Daniel Gross, Jean Tirole. I participated myself Jean-Henri, I think, also participated, Ufuk, which shows that it's absolutely not a DARPA. We can go on. We don't have anything approaching DARPA in continental Europe. I don't know if you do have that in the US, in the UK. Me, I am advocating a joint France-UK DARPA. Voilà, that I think would be a way to get you back into the giron européen. Voilà. But no, but that's interesting because you see, the Draghi report is to tell us, you see, you need basic research innovation ecosystem we don't have in Europe. You need an adequate financial ecosystem. We don't have that in Europe. And you need DARPA, and we don't have that in Europe. And that's the Draghi report. That's the essence of the Draghi report. In fact, Europe is a regulatory giant and a budgetary dwarf. It's very, Hayek has very good aspects to it. But the idea there, we have three pillars of the European economic doctrine, the Stability Pact, but we put all type of spending. We say no more than 3% of deficit. But we put on the same footing, pensions and investment in growth. Then competition policy, but in the name of competition policy, we rule out any form of sectoral state aid. That's not good. And we have a new budget, which is very small. So the idea is that we need to put if we want to stop this decline vis-a-vis the US, we need to put ourselves to the American standards, our basic research system, our financial ecosystem, our industrial policy tools. And that means that we need to revisit the tools of the European doctrine. It's not that we should abandon Maastricht, European Commission, but we have to adapt it to so that we can implement Draghi. That's very much. And the problem we have in Europe is that Europe very often moves when they feel emergency. So they felt urgency when you had COVID. They feel urgency with Ukraine, but they don't feel for the moment urgency looking at the decline vis-a-vis the US. They don't feel that as a problem. There are even some people say, why should we care? But we should care, because if we decline vis-a-vis US and China, because now China is becoming a big player, that's not good for us. We are allies with the US, but we can be allies and competitors. MIT and Harvard, it's co-competition between them. I mean, at MIT and Harvard, they have joint seminars, they write papers together, but they compete on hiring students and faculty. You can be ally and competitor. Some people believe that because we are allies, we should not be at all in the game, but we should be. And that's where a bit we are in this. And AI is particularly something, of course, that we should push. I mean, I push very much for investment in AI in France. And that's my book, Power of Creative Destruction. And that's a recent book edited by Ufuk and John on the economics of creative destruction, with contribution by the young generation. And thank you very much. I think I'm done now. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. An absolute tour de force, as I'm sure you all agreed. We have a little bit of time for questions. I'm just going to put my phone there, not because of the phone, but because of that's going to tell me what time it is. I'll take questions in batches of 3. Okay, I have one there. I have one at the back.
Alors, let me write down the question.
And then I have Jan for the third one.
Thank you, Professor. Very, very, very exciting talk. I mean, so illuminating and stuff. But just coming to your headline numbers, what you were initially showing, like Asimoglu saying 0.07.
Yeah.
So it boils down to 0.71 for a 10-year period TFP growth.
Yeah.
Which is not very different from your headline number of 0.68.
Exactly. So I was of 0. So I'm 10 times more than he is. He's 0.07 and I'm 0.7. You see what I mean?
No, but your 0.7 is
for 10 years,
for
0% at point.
So Asimoglu is also for a 10-year period comes to 0.7.
No. It's per year for 10 years. You understand? That's why I was not clear.
Oh, yours is per year.
It's per year for 10 years.
Oh my God, that's a huge difference. That's a huge difference.
Yes.
So yours is even probably then ahead of what I have seen from the iBank reports and stuff, which is very, very sort of
Yeah.
saying that we have a generative AI which will change and transform the whole
But
thing.
there are some people who are much more optimistic than I am, than 0.7 for 10 years per year
Right.
for 10 years.
So why is this so huge a difference coming in methodologies?
Okay, can
No,
we?
no. There I use the same methodology, except that I didn't believe his numbers. That's what I did.
No
So I
sense
took
at all.
his, I used two methodologies. I used the extrapolation and then I used his own methodology. But I contested his choice of figures on each of the components. You see what I mean? I didn't take a different methodology. Just that the numbers he picked, I didn't believe them.
So how would this be consistent given that if you look at Clem's data on productivity with the double deflations and stuff, we hardly get any TFPG growth in recent years, despite this massive investments which are going on. So is
because it takes time. I mean, at some point, you see, the thing is that the AI, for a while, we know from Paul David, for a while, nothing must happen, and then you have the takeoff.
So
and then we arrive at the time where the takeoff will take place.
Okay, maybe we should go to the question at the back.
Exactly. So that's why for a while it's exactly the solo thing. For a while you didn't see computer, but at some moment it takes off.
Okay, thank you. Next one.
Thank you very much. Fantastic lecture. Absolutely.
Thank you.
A couple of questions. One is on the mission. So we need a mission to boost the innovation, to boost effort.
Yeah.
Do you think the environmental crisis could be the next mission to gather forces to produce?
Oh, absolutely. Here I spoke about AI. I could have done a lecture on green innovation and that's my other topic. So I work a lot on that actually, and I believe that we need a lot there. The debate is that in Europe we believe a lot in carbon pricing, and I think it's very important carbon pricing because it redirects firms not only production but also innovation towards green technology. But I believe also in green industrial policy. And again, there we need both actually, because we have both environmental and knowledge externalities. You see, typically firms that have innovated a lot in dirty technologies in the past, they keep innovating in dirty technologies in the future. That's what we call path dependence. And because of that, you need, and that's the work I did with Darren and with David Emus and with others. There we argued there in our AER paper, and then I did subsequent work with John Van Reenen on automotive industry. You need both instruments. You need carbon price and you need industrial policy. In the US, they do mainly industrial policy, the IRA, and in Europe, we do mainly the carbon price. And I think we need both actually to boost green innovation, because I think we will need green innovation, not just. I have a.
The second question is going back to the issue about the impact of AI on employment.
Yes.
Depending on the type of employment.
Yes.
There is a lot of discussion in the creative industry. And lots of people fear that AI is going to replace the jobs because they're imitating voices and songs.
For example, dubbing movies will be a problem. Exactly. So, there will be jobs like that will be at risk. Yeah.
And certainly that is a sector that needs a lot of regulation.
Yeah, of course. Of course, but you need regulation, but you need the right regulation, because if you have too many regulations, then it's bad for competition, because only the big ones then can know how to deal with the regulation. So you need regulation, but you need to have the right regulation. If you have too many regulations, it becomes an entry barrier to small firms. So that's why you have to be careful.
Fantastic. And Jan.
Thank you very much for your lecture. I think it's interesting to see the difference in Ashimoto's work. I think one point that Ashimoto is arguing is that the micro studies are basically based on easy to learn tasks. In the future, we have to move to harder to learn tasks. And that's I think to me sounds like a very good reason to take conservative estimates, as he is doing in his calculations.
You want to take the optimistic or the pessimistic?
I think he takes a more pessimistic one, because he says the micro studies are based on easy to learn tasks. And for harder to learn tasks, it may be more difficult. The productivity gains will be smaller, and therefore he says it's better to take a lower estimate.
Look, I decomposed each of the things. I showed you how it does, and I tried. And I didn't take the most optimistic. I took a kind of middle scenario on each of the 4 components, and you choose. I mean, you decide what you believe in. And it didn't take into account the fact that AI will make ideas easier to find. I mean, in research that's on top of the. So if you look at his methodology, I mean, I argued. I mean, you can agree on on the figures. You can say, me, I believe in the Ashimoto figures, and I don't believe in your figures. But I abstracted from the fact that AI will certainly improve the productivity in the production of ideas. And we know that. I mean, people save enormous amount of time with ChatGPT, when they do research.
Based on, because all your co-authors you have in your work, they find this work that new ideas are hard to find. There's a beautiful app.
Yeah, I will tell you why ideas are not harder to find. I will tell you. I give you an example. Economics. Okay. I saw general equilibrium theory when I was a student. Okay. It went up. There was a big fashion. It was a burst of papers on general equilibrium. And then it went down. You run into decreasing returns. But then you had incentive theory. You went up and down. Then you had game theory. You went up and down. Contract theory. You went up and down. So it's true. In each particular line, you end up running into decreasing returns. But we have never had as many papers submitted. Now you need AR, you need AR Insight, you need AG, so many AG. Now GP has the number of also this on the subsidiaries. QJ, which was quarterly, now is monthly. We never had as many good papers, and they get rejected because there are many good papers. So if you look at the economic production overall, you never had as many good papers as we have now. So each particular line run down, but you have new lines. For example, cameras. You can take pictures with cameras. Okay. Of course, we run out of decreasing returns in innovating on camera, but now you use your iPhone to take pictures. You always have new things. You see, that's the view that we have. You see what I mean? On each particular line, you run into decreasing returns, but we keep going like this. You see, we don't just go on one line. We are broader. You see.
Yeah, the debate is whether these are productivity enhancing activities.
Yeah.
These extra papers in QE are really productivity enhancing for the economy as a whole.
Let's maybe hold the thought on that one. And I'm
final question then maybe. Another first point that Aghion makes is that some AI will stimulate activities with a negative social value. He gives the example of social media. IT security. AI would lead to more cyber attacks and therefore more spending, wasted spending on IT security. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's right. It's true. That's why you need good you need to adapt the institutions, policies. I don't say that AI. I don't have a Panglossian view of technology. I'm not saying that technology will bring us everything, but it makes things possible. Then it's up to us to adapt, to put the right regulations, to like we had when we had cars. When we do our cars, without red lights, we will all go die. You see, and then people decide to put red lights, green, code de la route and all that. And then you could have, you could drive in London. I mean, you could. You see what I mean? There are always, things that get in the way. But the difficulty, my view, is that the difficulty is not the technology itself. It's the way we respond to the technology. The technology, if we don't direct it well, it brings you to the worst thing. But if we can harness it, it can. It's like a horse. It's like a horse, you see. I mean, if you don't direct your horse, you get there. But if you know how to direct your horse, you can get somewhere. And that's the view there.
Okay. I have another set of two.
Yes.
Amanda, then the gentleman over there, and then yourself.
Hi, Amanda Rowland on the council here. My point is a little bit similar to the last one. We've got two things here. We've got the supply of AI. And we've got the demand for AI. Clearly, they're linked in the market. I'm interested in your point actually on regulation, and I think regulation is genuinely quite difficult in a market like AI, but presumably will become clearer. But my question is, will we have the right sort of supply of AI to meet the needs and maximize the well-being of the world? And in particular, specifically the developing world, will AI be good for them, or will it actually supply the developed world and not the developing world?
So that depends very much on policies we put. I mean, it's like, the green innovation. Innovation is not spontaneously green. We can make it greener if we have carbon price, if we have the consumers play a big role there, civil society plays a big role. And it's not just government, it's civil society as well. I believe very much in the triangle. I know Wendy Carlin came, no? You had Wendy, who I'm very close to. And probably she spoke about the triangle with some balls, I don't know, she mentioned. But I believe very much in the fact that it's the response to all that is the fact that its firms innovate, but they may not innovate at all the way you want. And that's why you need the state, but the state can be captured by firms. And that's where civil society is so important. And I think that triangle is a response. So it doesn't mean that it will automatically be the case. But that's where you can have hope that it could happen. But then it's a fight. It's not sure. There is no guarantee that things will go well. But at least you know that there are things that you can find that you can have so that things are moved. Anyway, we can't avoid the AI revolution. It's there. So what we can do is to harness it as well as we can. That's all we can do. We cannot say we stop it. We can't. But what we can do is to push for institutions within countries or internationally to to make sure that we get the best out of it. That's what we can do, like we did with previous technologies, and that's how we move.
Thank you for emphasizing the institutions and how we're going to see the growth of institutional economics. But that's not the real question. It's about on the policy aspects. Where would you, I mean, talk about institution, US and the European Union now have very different institutions. So where would you put your, for example, your basic research unit at European level, governed from there, or at the French level?
I think it's both. I mean, and I think I don't know if we should do everything with the. I don't know. We are 27. How many countries are in Europe? So it's always, for example, DARPA. Would I do a DARPA with all 27 countries or 30 countries, or would I do a kind of a coalition of the willing? Say, you know, let's have countries that want to do DARPA together. Could be UK, France, Germany. We start something. If other people want to join, they join. So that we don't align on the mean, we align on the max. And I have a view on Europe which is flexible. You see what I mean? I think we need to get the goodwill, and people with goodwill should get things going. I don't think you should align on the work. You see what I mean? And that's my own view, to push things like what Draghi wants to push. That personally would work better. Yeah. And UK would be included. I believe we need UK there. I will tell you something. It's much easier for us to work with Britain.
Thank you.
France, we miss them. We miss you guys very much. That's what Bruno Le Maire, now is no longer finance minister, told me that it was so sad not to have a Britain on it, because it makes meetings much more dull and difficult without having my colleagues from Britain.
To be fair, many of us are very sad that we're not part of
we are
it.
there to cry. Voilà, we will be. Let's be positive. Again, let's be positive, and let's build this Europe, you know, this technological Europe together.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Thank you. I've got Prais here from the MS in Spain. To what extent the US advantage on growth and productivity stems also from scale and economies of scale? Because you know that also in the Draghi report and also and in Europe in the debate over, there's also this idea of, you know, we don't have sufficiently large companies. If the source of that productivity growth comes from scale, then we also have a problem there.
It's more than that. It's more than that. In fact, I mean, first, the market, the European EU market, if we really had a single market, we are a big market, okay? If we had a single capital market, a unified capital market, we have a pretty big capital market, okay? So our problem is that we are very segmented. Not that we are not big. Europe and plus UK, we are big, where we are segmented. That's what really Draghi emphasizes. And the big problem is that the US, they focus on high tech. They went for high tech. We went in Europe mainly for incremental innovations in automobile, in tradition, in mid-tech. We didn't go for high-tech. So that's very interesting. I could show you, I gave my lecture yesterday at Collège de France. There's been various papers showing that very forcefully how Europe did not, because with DARPA, with the venture capital, those are the guys who go for high-tech. When you have the banks, they go for mid-tech. They don't go for high-tech. So, and the problem also is that the large firms in Europe nowadays are the same as they were 50 years ago, not in the US. There is creative destruction in the US. It's not the same firms. It's not the same specialization. We kept the same specialization and the same guys. That's the problem we have. Turnover is insufficient. I'm not against having large firms, but they are the same large firms and doing the same things. And that's the problem we have, and not big enough in high tech.
On that note, I'm afraid we're going to have to call questions to halt. But people who give our public lectures, I don't know if you're aware of this, actually receive a medal.
Oh, really?
And yes, and we're very, very fortunate, as I said earlier, that David Prais is here to present it. So I will hand over.
Let me sit down, then I sit.
No, please stand.
I stand up.
So first of all, Louise, my mind is blown. So thank you. I think incredible insight. We may well have some different views around the table here in terms of where it's going, and all valid to add to the knowledge base, but certainly it opens one's up. I know my father, for one, would have focused on the education piece more. I'll give you that. And he would have said that as AI changes the roles we have, we need to manage this and we need to create the right environment so senior people can manage the junior AI as they replace the junior roles. and that's where we should be focusing. Now, he's not here. I can't guarantee it, but knowing him, I'm sure that's the case. But first of all, can I thank the National Institute? Every year they hold this event, and it's remarkable, and I come whenever I can. And it's great to see keeping my father's name alive is quite remarkable to me in many ways, that other people would care other than family. Secondly, all of you, what a room. Wow. I mean, really, I mean, I'm sure they could have sold it 3 times over. Absolutely remarkable. And last, but absolutely not least, Professor, I'm honored, absolutely honored to present on behalf of everybody here and on behalf of the National Institute and my family this award to say thank you so much for coming. It is really remarkable.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Very good. Well,